Happy afternoon, everyone, or happy morning, wherever you guys are. My name is Sabia Abdi, and like Christine said, I'll be talking through, or not me, Katie and I will be talking through the education challenges. This is a summary of what we talked about in June at the ASEEBED session. So many thanks to those of you that contributed. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm an assistant teaching professor in BioE at Rice. Our colleague James, who has been amazing for the session, for the preparation, for these slides, he unfortunately has class, and so he did help prepare, but he sends his regrets that he can't make it. He is an assistant teaching professor at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And then Katie, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Katie Reuther. I'm a practice associate professor at University of Pennsylvania in Bioengineering, and I also run a medical device innovation center called Penn Health Tech. Sabia, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Katie. So we'll be kind of going back and forth with some of the key things that we want to share with you all. So the objective today is really to share the insights from the session and spur future efforts in BME education. I think we're all here because we love BioE education. We love what we do. And to really take it to the next level, more is needed, right? And so our hope is that through our conversation today, this will encourage a lot of us to do more, right? And so, and what is more? What does more look like? Is really kind of what our discussion is going to look like. So this is the goal for today. We'll start out with just a summary of what we talked about in the session and a summary of the challenges that kind of came out, emerged from those discussions in June. And then our take on really a call to action in terms of what needs to be done in terms of next steps. And then we would love discussion. So I think Katie and I are happy to take sort of a back seat and hear your voices and hear what you guys think. So we'll start out with our summary. Before I share anything, I would love maybe to hear from anybody who would like to share in terms of challenges that come to mind. You can either share it vocally or maybe put it in the text. So what challenges come to mind when you think of BME education?
I think Leora had one before, but she just put it in the chat. Leora, you feel free to unmute. You could kind of communicate.
Yeah, 100%. I think we all see that. And Reem, I see a comment from you, scaling laboratory coursework is definitely expensive. And times like right now where money is tight, it becomes difficult in terms of what do you sacrifice, right? So thank you. Thank you for participating here. All great suggestions. We did a pilot survey. So we sent out the survey. You guys might remember from the BED newsletter, we sent it out to the community and we collected these thoughts in terms of challenges that folks had identified. So you can see some of the ideas that you just shared popping up, as well as things like mental health, ethics, identity, engagement, lack of confidence, fear of trying new things, educating the public on what is biomedical engineering. And what we did was we took this list. So Katie, James, and I kind of stared at this list and we thought of, okay, what can we really tackle in this limited amount of time? So just a kind of a disclaimer with the federal landscape and the implications of it, this was really at the top of everyone's mind. And we thought that because the situation is so fluid and changing day by day, we thought that might not be the best use of our time considering. And so we decided to really focus on these five at the top in dark blue. So you can see adapting to AI and emerging tech, definition and responsibilities, teaching faculty, curricular challenges, which is a lot of what you guys were discussing right now, BME identity, and mental health challenges. And this was just based on kind of how common these responses were among the N of 20 that responded back to the survey. So in terms of the format of the session, for those of you that weren't there, we basically just had these three areas that we had folks kind of randomly just sit at tables that they were interested at and interested in terms of those topics. So what challenges have you faced in this area? How have you personally addressed these challenges? And then what would be a nice to have, kind of like a Christmas list or a wish list? Then we had a report out and a gallery walk. So we had representatives share what their challenge was and then something surprising that stood out or a helpful tip that they would like to share with the community. And then we had everyone just kind of walk around the room, share tips and share like maybe just a check or, take a look at this. Maybe this is a good resource to look at, or I would like to collaborate with you. This is an example of one of the large post-its that was around the room. We had a whole bunch. The room was quite decorated. So what we've done now is we took down those post-its and we summarized all of them in terms of what were the main takeaways. Like I said, these were the 5 areas that we discussed, and so now we'll go through these sort of step by step, and then we'll have our call to action, and then, of course, great discussion. So we'll start with curriculum. I think this is always at the top of everyone's list, right? It doesn't matter the time. I think curriculum, just the nature of BioE is such that it's a moving target, right? What is a core? What is an elective, right? And it seems like just the nature of the field. With the nature of the field, the needs are always evolving. So needs of research, industry. What is it that we should be teaching our students, right? Technologies are continuously evolving. Should coding be number one? Now with AI, ethics, biotech, instrumentation, what's more important than what? Obviously, we can't teach everything at the top level. And so this is a major concern, something that the community was very concerned about. And professional skills seems to be something that's very important that keeps coming up in terms of a skill set that we need to teach our students: communication, teamwork, making sure that our students are equipped to handle these different types of scenarios where they need to communicate in different settings. And then for those that have actually gone to modernize their curricula, it seems like there's not really a lot of incentive. You put a lot of time into it. You do all these stakeholder interviews, you talk to your advisory board, and there's not a lot of incentive. So these were some of the themes that emerged. And in terms of how to move forward, we kind of it touched on it in terms of a little bit today, just some of the ideas with the resources. But with class sizes increasing and teaching faculty already have a set of skills, it becomes kind of burdensome in terms of how do we equip our faculty with the appropriate skill sets to teach these evolving needs, right? Some of the ideas that we thought were really useful and actionable were mini sabbaticals for teaching focused faculty to stay current with trends in the field, and then require all faculty, not just uh, the folks that are doing all the teaching, right? Everyone to participate in discussions on curriculum, and this is truly necessary for it to be a successful effort. So these were the themes that emerged from curriculum. I'm going to keep moving. So the next one was AI and emerging tech. And long story short, the conversation really just focused on AI. I think everybody is really in that space. And so, in terms of challenges associated with AI, what that session in June, the themes that emerged were folks were really worried about students relying too heavily on AI and the consequences that may have, whether it was impacts on engagement, cognitive depth, and then the ability to think critically about fill in the blank, to communicate, to make ethical decisions. So it's kind of like you have to use AI in the appropriate way, right? If you come in too early and you don't allow yourself to critically think about something, you're shortcutting to what you should be learning. Inconsistency in AI use and academic honesty policy, that was another theme that emerged. And then finally, unclear use in industry. So how is industry using it, and what should we be doing that would make it a better fit with our curriculum? In terms of some strategies that emerged from those discussions, uh, faculty suggested AI proofing assignments, and ideas that came out were things like oral exams or in-person activities. The issue with some of these oral exam type scenarios is that it can be more stressful for students. So that is something to consider. AI literacy assignments. So this is where you actually ask students to use AI and then find out what the shortcomings are of that use. So for them to uncover the biases and issues. And then finally, improve faculty literacy for better preparation for AI interventions. And this might come as training, as a workshop, as collective resources that you can share. I'm going to turn it over to Katie. And Katie, you can just tell me when to move the slides forward.
Yeah, thanks, Sabia. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this concept of the teaching focused faculty, of which many of us are here, and sort of our responsibilities in this area. So you can go to the next slide. So some of the challenges that were discussed, I think many of us would be able to resonate with, including this additional workload and expectations for teaching focused faculty that aren't always visible, kind of referred to as invisible labor. I know I'm in the thick of it right now with a couple of letters of recommendation and things I'm doing for students. Oftentimes we're seeing teaching faculty will have more of that load, in addition to roles like undergraduate program chair and things like that. The other kind of area of focus was around perspective on career advancement and whether or not structural barriers might exist for teaching focused faculty. Another topic was focused on lack of access to professional development resources, including financial resources or other support for professional development. And then lastly, a challenge around just this perceived value of the contributions of teaching focused faculty, as well as the perceived value of the educational research that many of us are contributing to and performing. You can go on to the next slide. So some ideas around where to move forward, and I'll note that a lot of this, a lot of some good work came out from the Biomedical Engineering Council of Chairs Summit. I think it was maybe a year ago now, in several papers. So we have some citations there. The first was around how do we formalize the processes and standards for promotion and evaluation, because also oftentimes this really is nebulous within our institutions, and we think maybe formalized structured could help with this process. What other support might be provided to faculty, and including peer groups of teaching faculty or support from leaders, department chairs or tenure track faculty that are just supportive overall of teaching focused faculty. I think many of us who've been doing this a while have found those champions in our tenure track faculty that have supported us and unlocked some of our advancement in this area. Another really low-hanging fruit is just inclusive language, and many of us have different titles and language. More things along the lines of teaching focus instead of non-tenure track is another area that was discussed. And then, institutional policies and leadership support of teaching focused faculty, which I alluded to before, when, senior faculty and leaders in our institutions can be supportive of our work. That was a really critical piece moving forward. You can go to the next one. So the next topic I'll touch on is just this concept of biomedical engineering identity. And I think it goes to some of the comments I think Paul and others have mentioned, just the breadth of what we engage in with biomedical engineering can make this really challenging for students to feel some identity and connection to the field. Can you go to the next slide? So some of the challenges were, again, just BME as a field, how broad it is, and oftentimes, it's not always widely accepted what this area is. And there's been some work that's been published in this area as well. Students are often struggling to figure out how to market themselves to industry, and industry also might not be exactly aware of the skills that biomedical engineers have compared to mechanical engineers or electrical engineers. Another interesting kind of discussion was around the fact that our faculty often have very diverse backgrounds. I think that's just the breadth of the field overall. And some might not even have training in, like our biomedical engineering degrees or exactly. Maybe they're coming from mechanical or computer science or other traditional fields. And so that kind of makes it even more difficult for our students as we think about identity in biomedical engineering and seeing themselves in the faculty as well. Next slide. So we had a lot of great discussion on how we might move forward. I think a big area of emphasis with respect to BME identity was the use of project-based learning and how that really helps our students connect to really applied understanding of what biomedical engineers do and the impact that they might be able to have. Ideally, this happens earlier in the curriculum for undergraduate students. I know some of us don't really get into the meat of bioengineering until junior or senior year. And what can we do earlier in the curriculum to retain those students, but also make them feel connected to the degree? Also, another kind of innovative approach, or what about resources to develop our own faculty identity in this area? And so there was a mention of a mini sabbatical previously for course development, but the same applies for perhaps engagement with industry and interactions there and thinking about the impact of our work, as well as thinking about as this field grows, we'll likely be having more faculty with a BME background. Another area that was important was thinking about how we are supporting our biomedical engineering students in particular with formal training and professional development. And there are some programs that have a lot of professional development, including, refining your resume, developing your executive presence, preparing for interviews, those types of things. But can we give our students that experience and support to help them sort of market themselves and tell their story? There was a desire for more flexibility in the curriculum, more preparation in math. We felt like that foundation would allow for the students to feel more connected to the concept of being an engineer overall, which is an important piece of this. There's also ideas about how we're designing our space and fostering community and connection. I know this is always an area in academia that we struggle with because there isn't always space or financial resources to build new space, but maybe reimagining existing space, gathering spaces, things like that, to foster community and connection for these students, and how important that is in improving their identity in BME. And then lastly, just more industry engagement. I think folks brought that up as well. Connections with alumni, advisory boards, and really making sure there's engagement there. So I'll pass it back to Sabia for the final topic.
Thanks, Katie. So the last one that we talked about was mental health. I think we can all relate at this time, but with mental health, specifically focused on students here, it seems that there's a lack of resources and training. A lot of times we as faculty that are student facing are faced with handling these difficult situations. And a lot of times we don't have a lot of training. I think resources are shared, but uh, nominally, not as much, and the conversations we have to have can put us in difficult situations. Something else that emerged was how to teach resilience in our students. Now, this can look like kind of separating their grades from their identity, or encouraging them to think about failure as not a dirty word or a bad word, and thinking about sort of mastery and competencies, that kind of thing. But how to teach resilience in our students early on was another major theme. And then something else that was sort of it couldn't be missed, but that numbers are rising. If you look at the stats in terms of students that are facing these types of challenges, it's not great in terms of the recent trends. Again, just like Katie shared, the recent Council of Chairs has an amazing paper. I think it's Karen Jensen and others that have written it. So it's a great resource if you guys are interested in terms of mental health resources. But some ideas that emerged in terms of strategies, how to deal with this going forward, was a curricular redesign. So build in this resilience training early on. So think of ways that students can normalize failure, right? So don't so equip themselves with the appropriate skills going forward. Connection strategies. So these are things like knowing students' names, being kind of proactive about reaching out to them if you see them struggling, allowing some time in class where you just say, okay, let's take 10 minutes for everyone to share what they did over the weekend. So just engagement, connection, more than engagement, connection with each student. Increased resource support and training. So just giving us the appropriate resources that we can share with the students, and the universities themselves kind of stepping up and making sure that they have folks there ready to meet with students. They have places that students can actually have testing done if separately if they need to, and even just information about what the students are truly struggling with, so we can better help them, not kind of a generic letter. And then finally, reduction in barriers. So making it easier for us to help the students, and easier for the students to talk to us about these types of things. So there were other emerging topics that did come out from our pilot survey. We, because of time, didn't really go into it too much during the session, but just to be thorough and comprehensive here, ethics is one that we can't ignore. I feel like AI and ethics is kind of hand in hand these days, but faculty wanted to know more in terms of what's the appropriate timing of ethics education in our curriculum, what's the appropriate frequency, how should we assess, is there a repository of ethics resources that we can all kind of collectively share from. Grade inflation was another topic. growing enrollment and consequences. A lot of universities are looking at encouraging or increasing those numbers. And then how does that impact how we conduct our teaching and how we conduct the classrooms? And then, of course, student engagement, right? I feel like engagement is always a challenge that we're facing. So with that, that was kind of a summary very quickly of the five main topics and other topics that kind of emerged from our pilot survey. We now will move on to our call to action. So the call to action was really what James, Katie, myself, we sort of thought of these areas and all the discussions that we had and sort of how can we move forward, right? What are some productive next steps that we as a community can take forward? And so in no order, I think we start with reframing our view of the curricular changes and embrace a more fluid curricular model. As you all know, the whole idea of breadth versus depth, what's a core, what's elective, what courses should we teach? These are questions that we've been facing year after year. This is not anything new. I think sometimes just the topics change, but this is something that keeps coming up. So I I think what we're sort of positing or suggesting here is that BioE is something that's very fluid, right? And so we should embrace that. And maybe, I don't know, we can use ABET or another organization to really enforce that evolution of curriculum. Maybe put some milestones or some measures in place so that we are forced to always consider our curriculum and think about what are the current themes of our time, what are the appropriate skills, and how are we making sure that our curriculum is matching that. And so instead of thinking, oh, what is the one curriculum that we should all be kind of embrace this, oh, it's going to be changing, with time. The second kind of main theme or call to action that came out was integrating core courses in AI and ethics within the curriculum. I think that a lot of our different departments, this is like the one of the key topics we're all thinking about. We thought that how can we build strengths and redundancies within these areas and really encourage that critical thinking early on. And so AI is something that is here to stay. It's only going to keep growing, and there are going to be various ethical dilemmas. So how can we build that into our curriculum so students see more of that while they're learning, while they're in school. Um, Number three, take advantage of resources. So utilize existing organizations for repository generation and dissemination, and then also encourage senior BME faculty to advocate. So let me take that apart for a second. So a lot of what was coming out from these discussions was that there are things that we would all like in terms of repository or just shared resources. Is there a way that we can lean on existing organizations such as BMES, ASEEBED, BEEC, BME IDEA to create training, create repositories, create guidelines for promotion or workload, maybe hold some workshops or special meetings or open source training material, and then share it with the community. Maybe some folks can champion this and take this on. And the second part of this, in terms of taking advantage of resources, is encouraging senior BME faculty to advocate. I will be the first one to say that any and a lot of my success is really dependent. It comes from senior BME faculty laying down that groundwork, that foundation, and supporting and pushing and encouraging us, right? And I think that that's part and parcel of the solution. I think if they can continue to do that and to advocate for what's needed in our field, I think that that would be great for the field. And then finally, continue to grow, communicate, and engage with alumni. A lot of us are in touch with alumni from our departments, and I think that we have these conversations, which are really helpful in terms of what is missing in our curriculum, what is missing in our program, what do we need to build in more. I think if we can continue to use our alumni network to refine our curriculum, improve our identity, and really advocate for us, that would also help the field as well. So with that, that's all we have. We have some slides where we talked about various resources in the community, but maybe we'll pause here. Here are some discussion questions that we put together in terms of maybe some other emerging challenges that you didn't see today and you would like to talk about, or some promising strategies that you've personally tried or you know about and you'd like to share. Are there other disciplines or industry that we can look at for inspiration? And then finally, what can we collectively do? So, how can we reduce barriers for advocacy and guidelines and training and industry, academia, communication? So, with that, I'm going to stop. Katie, was there anything that we missed that we should share?
No, thanks, Sabia. And I'm going to put these discussion questions in the chat just so we could also stop sharing and open it up for Q&A.
Thank you so much. So, I'm